30% of people using restrooms in New York airports, 19% of those in Miami airports, and 27% of air travelers in Chicago aren't stopping to wash their hands. This survey was in 2003, and it observed 7,541 people in public washrooms in all of these cities. So what is the population of interest? So in order to answer this question, you need to know that the population of interest is basically asking what is the sample. And in order for this survey being conducted to be accurate and fair, it must be simple, random, and unbiased. So they started with 7,541 people, and they had those 6 cities divided up, and the percentages are as shown. But for San Francisco, Dallas, and Toronto, we don't know the percentages, so that could lead to a source of bias, but I wouldn't consider it to be an obvious source of bias. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with their survey conducted. Also, another thing that could be biased potentially is that this was done by the American Society of Microbiology, so they are looking to essentially see all of the people that don't use public facilities very well. So I said that they were conducted, that the sample was selected in a reasonable way, and it is likely to be representative of the population, and there are no obvious sources of bias, although there might be a few potential. To reduce bias, they observed rather than asked, and they did a large number of people, so it wasn't like they had 20 people. For the AP question, it was talking about eating at dorms in college. So one evening, the manager asked the first 100 students entering the dining hall to answer the following questions. So right off the bat, evening is a broad word to use. The first 100 students could be biased, and they're all entering the dining hall. So, in the setting, explain how bias may have been introduced. Evening is broad, and the first 100 students might represent a biased group, like I said. They could make it more simple and randomized by considering different times in different clusters or groups of individuals, because you might get all the athletes at one time, you might get all of the more studious people at another time, that kind of thing. In this setting, explain how bias may have been introduced based on the way the question was worded, and suggest how it could have been worded differently to avoid that bias. So they use the word should be, and should be suggests that there is, in fact, a correct answer. So instead, they should have avoided using any strong contrast words because they conducted the survey based off complaining students, which could lead to biased results.